So this is going to be not only introductory, but it's only going to be about 50% about Drupal and 50% about community building and ideas and that sort of thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a site that I am in the process of building that's sort of in the, what I call sort of minimally kind of viable product stage. It's not really quite there yet, but it's an idea I had about 2 years ago and never actually got around to doing anything about until recently. So I have to put this slide in here because if I don't, I forget to tell you who I am and what I do. I run a consulting company up in northwestern Wisconsin, a little bit out of Eau Claire, near Menominee, if anybody knows where that is, and actually outside of the beautiful metropolis of Downsville, Wisconsin. The company there is called Cruisekeen Consulting LLC. I also run a hosting company called cmsfarm.com, which does a lot of hosting for nonprofits and some state agencies who do a lot of kind of customized hosting for people, so it's not a regular hosting company in some ways. I used to work for a bunch of different places. I'm a recovering system administrator. I used to be the head admin at Fermilab in Illinois, Honeywell Technology Center, and I worked as a consultant for some years for Collective Technology until that whole consulting business exploded and died. The dot-com boom was real hard on us. Well, the end of the dot-com boom was real hard on us. So I live on a 160-acre farm outside of Downsville, and this is kind of the view from my office window, so it's pleasant. So it occurred to me a couple of years ago that there were a lot of different things going on, and although I do build websites for other people, I occasionally build one for myself. And this one falls into that category. There are a bunch of issues involved. I live in a rural area. A lot of people around me live in a rural area, oddly enough. And a lot of those people don't have much internet access. It happens I have fiber running into my farmhouse, so like I am really lucky. And everybody on my phone co-op has fiber running into their houses, so that's really cool. But a lot of my neighbors, you know, are trying to get their cell phone to work and trying to get internet through that. My cell phone doesn't work in my office, but I have fiber. So I also have to fool with that. So for a lot of people, email is like where it's at. And I noticed that an awful lot of the news and information between my neighbors goes through email lists. Plain old-fashioned mailman listservs. It's kind of interesting. Broadband's an issue for a lot of people. One of the things that drove this is, since I have a certain amount of political activism and know a lot of people who are activists in one area or another, people are, and I'm sure some of you will be familiar with this, always coming up to me and saying, you know, could you just do this little website for me? And would you do it for free? Because, you know, like, who needs to earn a living? On top of that, you know, the little websites often get, like, not to be so little when you find out what they really want. So it occurred to me, well, it's easier to build one big honking website than 100 little ones, and it's especially a lot easier to maintain that. We'll find out if that theory of mine was true or not. But I thought, well, let's leverage the power of Drupal on this. And in particular, I thought, well, gee, you know, I have this love-hate relationship with Drupal distributions because sometimes they make life easier and sometimes you spend all your time trying to fight with the distribution and its idea of how life ought to work. How many of you have used Drupal distributions? And how many of you have ever used OpenAtrium? Okay. One person in the room will understand this completely, I'm sure, and the rest of you will try and do my best. So this idea has been kicking around in my brain for a couple of years now. It started out as a journalism project because I've got a lot of interest in local journalism projects and hyperlocal stuff. You know, and figuring out that problem that nobody has yet been able to solve of how you do that without zillions of dollars coming from somebody who is just going to give it to you for no reason. And I found out it was really hard to fund. So I shrank my ambitions a little bit. It's now sort of a community building website, and it's in the process of getting built. One of the things you find out if you're in the community building business is that if Drupal is hard, building communities harder. It can be really hard. Sometimes this little bit of change you're trying to introduce into people's lives is really difficult. So the idea here is I have built this site that has a lot of, and if I sound like I'm going through puberty, it's allergies. My voice cracks a lot these days. There's a lot of mini sites, or what we're going to call communities, that are either built by topic or geographic area. They're kind of two different kinds of sites and a bunch of different sub-kinds underneath that. I wanted to use organic groups for access control because we wanted to have some of the communities be open and some of them be private. I wanted to do a lot of really heavy use of calendaring so that communities could, you know, put their events up there, and people could, in general, put their events up there and have them talk to each other. The site's full of document and file repositories. That's not being used a lot. What is really being used a lot so far is discussion groups. So the flavor of that is it's an online discussion, but it's tied into email so that you can start a discussion and everybody can talk back and forth and communicate via email once it gets started. Starting the discussion via email brings up a lot of interesting security issues. You know, you don't want your whole site to be full of Viagra ads, and people will find out what the email addresses are. So right at the moment, you have to start a discussion on the site. And there are a bunch of resources. There are things we call resources, which are a content type that's being turned into a lot of different things. And you can subscribe to everything via email, and you can reply to everything via email pretty much. And when I started thinking about it, I realized, well, it's a pretty close fit to OpenAtrium in a lot of ways. A lot of the features that are actually built and working in OpenAtrium were very close to what I needed, so I started there. And I've been adding in new content types that OpenAtrium doesn't have. I'm working on some social media integration and other things. Part of the idea here was to build a site that was built enough so that you could talk to people about what you can do with it, and then find out, well, what do people really need and want, and then try to proceed from there and add in more features. So part of the idea was to build templates for different types of use cases on the site and then use those to build communities. So some of the things that are going on here, and some of these do exist, and some of them are pipe dreams. I was hoping this would be a good place for nonprofits to do some interesting things. Small businesses, we've got some interest from, musical groups, for example, who would like to have a local place to put up their music and when their gigs are coming up and that sort of thing. So arts businesses have shown some interest in this. Discussion topics, like I said, that's one kind of section in the site. places in Wisconsin. I'm building out one for the Chippewa Valley, the area around where I live right now. So it's like Chippewa Valley, and then it'll be split into some spaces. Political groups and organizers, that's actually the one that's getting the most uptake right now. I'm part of an organizing co-op in northwestern Wisconsin, and they're really moving toward using this. And small government bodies, I actually host a couple of township sites that I built, and I would dearly love to move them into here, especially since some of those are currently living on Drupal 6, and I haven't found the time to, do all that extra free work to move them into something newer. They've been there for a long time. So right at the moment, that's sort of what it is. It's a bunch of communities, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Some of the things I'm thinking about are having text message notification. Particularly some of the political groups would really love to be able to do text message blasts to their members, so thinking about that. Site could really use some appropriate theming love. I'm using the newest OpenAtrium theme right at the moment, which is really nice from a functional viewpoint, but it's kind of ugly. I'm trying to move forward and find out, what some of the useful things are that we could be doing. I'm in the process of adding in some real-time editing on the site, and that'll either be like an interface into Google Apps or more likely Mozilla Etherpad, which is real similar to writing docs on Google Apps. But I've got the source code for that, so it's a little easier to deal with. And I started to write up some tutorials on OpenAtrium because although it is a wonderful product and has all kinds of lovely features, I've been spending an awful lot of time trying to understand how they actually work and what they do. And it's one of those processes where, like, pretty much every day it's one of those, oh, like that, huh? I see, kind of processes. So it's been slow and interesting. I'd really like there to be some more documentation and examples out there for the non-developer type. And I'm sort of developer type myself. So, like I can write modules when I need to, but usually I'd rather have somebody else do that for me. So I'm trying to move forward. I'm working with other groups. And as I said, I've got some real interest in working with other alternative media, and I've got some things going with low-power radio stations, community TV, some of the hyper-local websites in our part of the state. And I'm building up to having some meetings with those communities in August to try to get more stuff done. I've learned some things in the process. One of them is that getting people to use a platform that isn't Facebook is really hard. And that's the general notion as well, we'll just use Facebook. And only then it's always like, but I want to do this and I can't do it in Facebook, and I can't write a post on Facebook and be sure anybody else actually ever sees it. That's kind of a real limitation. I'm discovering user experience is not quite what I thought it was, because I'm used to working with sites where, well, there are a couple of people who add content to it, and otherwise it's mostly public facing. This is very different in that, the notion would be most of the people will be participants, and you quickly find out that the things that are obvious to you really aren't obvious to people who aren't doing a lot of stuff on the web. Particularly, I'm finding this out in the political organizing group I'm working with, where, I get all these problem reports like, well, I click on add content and nothing happens, and it's because when you hover over add content, this menu appears, and so you can click on the button all day and nothing happens until you click on something on the menu. I thought that was obvious. I was wrong. So even a tool like this that really tries to be user-friendly really needs giving some help to people and some training. And I think that's being a lot harder than the technical stuff, actually. I'm hosting it myself at my own company. It's not on big enough of a server, so if this takes off, I'm going to have to fix it. OpenAtrium's really, 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 really big and memory hungry, and it doesn't perform really well unless you do some stuff with it. And I'm bringing this up only because, some people are interested in hosting stuff. So it is using Memcache as a cache. It's behind a Cloudflare proxy. We do a lot of Cloudflare with clients these days, and that removes some of the pressure from the web server because all of the assets and static content and stuff like that is up living on Cloudflare's network. I originally had this behind a varnish proxy on the server, but it really didn't help because all the static stuff was being cached out of Cloudflare and everything else was with people who were logged in, so it really wasn't any help. So I'm working on some speed increases. The site's a little slower than I'd like it to be right now. And of course, there's always this issue, well, how do I keep from paying for this completely myself? We are doing some advertising. That's hopeless, it's hopeless for everybody. You just cannot make enough money off of that. We're working on some purchase of levels of involvement where some of the more advanced features I'm in the process of working on, you'll have to pay some kind of yearly membership to have that happen, member databases, that sort of thing, fancy theming if you need it for your section. I have a couple crazy ideas for integrating some e-commerce into it, and event ticketing and doing ticket sales, but we'll see how that goes. So part of the reason I'm here is I'm wondering if you had access to a site like this, and you do, what would you like to see happen in it, and are you interested in joining in? But we'll talk about that after we take a look. So this is real interesting. One of the shift keys doesn't work on this keyboard, and so that's why I couldn't get logged in. I was using a broken shift key. Safari. Boy, I'm so not used to using Safari. So the site lives at WIs.community. And as you can see, it's not beautiful. This is the front page you get when you aren't logged in, and it has a bunch of stuff on it. Oh yeah. One of the problems of being used to having a password manager is you have to remember your passwords. But golly. So you log in and you get your dashboard page, and we have a bunch of things in here. These are, on the left, are my favorite spaces on the site. So this is interesting. It's this name collision problem, which I'm not quite sure how to fix at this point because it's really messy. The site uses organic groups. So in some places in the user interface, since the OpenAtrium people have not managed to exercise all of them, the organic groups are called groups. But there is something in OpenAtrium called groups that has nothing to do with organic groups. They want to call the organic groups spaces, and some places it says spaces, and some places it says groups. To make life even worse, I want to call them communities. And there is a place in the interface to say, well, I don't want to call them spaces, I want to call them communities, and that works about half the time, depending on where you are in the site. So that's one of the things I need to fix. We need to have some consistent naming for these things. It's really ugly. So we have all of these sites over here for communities, which, as you see, says spaces. A fine example of things that need to be fixed. Because a lot of this needs some custom love. I can barely figure out how to scroll on it. So I have some stuff on my dashboard. It talks about me. It has the topics I've been involved in recently on the site, and all kinds of other good stuff that's slowly getting put in there. It also, over here on the left, talks about my points. People get points for doing things on the site, and one of these days I'm going to do something like that, like maybe you can earn a membership by contributing a lot of content. But once you log in, you get a different front page view. We also have tours. OpenAtrium has tours. You can take tours through the features of the site. I'm in the process of writing some new stops on the tour that actually apply to the peculiarities of the site. News articles throughout the site all show up on the front page. So you'll see, since I'm the only person writing much, there's the scroll bar. I'm also on the board of Menominee Market Food Co-op, and so food is one of the featured things on the site right now. Because food really. This is great because the projector makes the screen narrow. And so we got that. We got, you know, follow links. We got some navigational stuff. We have upcoming events, and that's all yanked together out of all the different calendars on the site, because each of the communities has its own calendar. A lot of views building. So you see there's a bunch of news here. Let's You have a bunch of menus here. Some of them are hidden, like over here, you know, you got your Drupal menus, which only shows up for administrators on the site. We have the list of spaces on the site, so like if we go to food, if it ever finishes loading, and there. Okay. So there's a little bit of theme customization that people can do on their own communities. You can change colors, you can, you know, change the images. Boy, why do I have to keep making this wider? This is the food calendar and the upcoming events. It's pretty much a typical Drupal calendar. Scroll bar with this stuff disappeared. There's a big, you know, monthly kind of calendar too. There are sections, there are what are called sections in OpenAtrium, which are sort of like different kinds of they're basically content types. So we got a couple different content types in most of the sites. There's a calendar, there's a discussion group, there's a document resource, there's news, And there are these things we call resources, which is turning into a lot of different things like restaurants, grocery stores, that sort of thing in this case. And there are links and addresses and have fields that change depending on what kind of entity you're putting into it. Yeah, let's look at one that's more interesting. So this is the organizing co-op I'm involved in, and this one is a private group, which you can tell because it says private. And it's doing a bunch of different things. It does some feed aggregation and it has news articles that appear on the front page. They have a 5-mile wide site by the time I'm done. And it has discussions. So I'm on the steering committee of this group because, like, you know, you can't ever be on too many boards. Which is probably why I look tired. Let's try this again. There's a Madison picture for you. So it has, this one actually features discussions, so its front page is discussions. And you can go in there and, this is annoying. It's really could be wide. I can't figure out any other way to scroll this that works. Oh, that's working. All right. Sometimes the keyboard works, sometimes it doesn't. So this is a discussion, and this one doesn't have any replies, but you need to reply online here, or I can send this out as a notification to the members on the steering committee, and they can reply. So, like when you're putting up a piece of content, I can say, steering committee. And select that, and that'll send out an email to everybody, and it's going to one of these days also have text messages as a way people can subscribe. You can also subscribe to different things. So, like if I want to follow this discussion, whether they notify me or not, I can say I want to follow it, and I'll get emails about it. So I think, and this is all new, so like, this is actually kind of nice, because you can put in that I want to notify the steering committee, and then I can see who the steering committee actually is. So that's kind of nice. The navigation of that sort of thing is much better than it was 6 months ago, thank God. So there are a lot of really nice features built into OpenAtrium, and right at the moment I'm trying to figure out how to leverage that better. Some things are complicated and not obvious to the user, and I need to figure out a way to deal with that. One of them being, if I put something up on the calendar and it's a food event and it's in the Chippewa Valley, I'd really like to have it appear in both groups, and you can do that. But the interface for it is less than obvious. I'm trying to work out something to make that clearer to people. So there's a lot of that sort of thing going on, just fixing the user interface. So, let's see, when do I have until? Probably finish up here. So this is what I'm up to. I'm trying to build a lot of online communities. I'm trying to give people a way to interact with each other better and put up events and that sort of thing. So if anybody has any questions, that would be great. Or if anybody has any ideas, that would be even better.
Can I see it on
Sorry, what?
Can I take a look at a bulletin board or discussion forum?
Well, the discussions are, there aren't any Drupal forums as such. There are what are OpenAtrium discussions, which are a different thing. So that's actually what this is.
Okay.
Because forums are sort of a really ugly, ill-thought-out child in Drupal, I'm afraid. And although people keep talking about fixing it, they never do. So, like, this is the discussion group for the steering committee, or the discussion section.
So it's not a discussion forum as I'm used to thinking about discussion forum?
Well, it sort of is. I mean, these are the topics here, and you can enter into any of them. Like, you know, this one's got more stuff going on in it, I think.
This is OpenAtrium 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the current version. So, so this is what they look like. You know, you've got a topic and discussions underneath it, and you can expand and contract those, or you can, you know, click the button and expand them all. Although, like, this is really hard to see because I have to keep stretching the screen out.
So you mentioned writing documentation, and you said something about a tour. So
Yeah.
do you have like an online tour, or do you sit down with somebody and go through them?
There's an online tour built into OpenAtrium 2, which is actually kind of nice. And I am writing extra steps into the tour and taking some of them out because some of the stuff doesn't really make sense in this context. And that all comes up when you go to this question mark. So you need to go to different parts of the tour, and it steps you through how you do things. So, like, this is how you change the banner on a community. And it shows you the different steps in that. So I'm trying to write some more of those. Yes?
I have a question. It seems like in this particular case, you're looking to have a sort of an online component to a group that meets offline.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
In the examples I gave you, that's true.
Well, what I was wondering was, is that more of your focus, or are you focused more on trying to bring people together who wouldn't otherwise be meeting offline?
I think I'm kind of trying to do both. I think there's a real value to meeting in person. And so one of the things I'm hoping will come of this is we will get communities of people involved. They'll build themselves a place here, and that maybe they will actually get together also. But clearly there's plenty of room for people who don't ever meet face to face. I mean, you know, it's like all the time we all spend on the web and then we come here, right? And this is cool. And we can all go out and have a drink together later. So I think the answer is both. Anybody else? Suggestions, ideas, questions? Yes?
Can you talk more about how you're using Cloudflare and why you chose it?
Sure. I don't know if people know about Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a very simple content distribution network. The idea is to, rather than have, and I'm not going to do the Cloudflare sales speech here, but the idea is to take those parts of your site that are static content, that are assets, you know, pictures, CSS files, JavaScript, that sort of thing, and instead of serving them up from your server, having them get cached out on Cloudflare servers around the net so that A, you don't have to handle the traffic for that, and B, it's it all sits closer to the edge of the net where your readers are, so this is a really big win for some sites. We host some sites for the UN. And how we ended up posting sites for the UN in Africa, I still don't understand, but that is one of the things we do. Cloudflare is a really big win for that because there are Cloudflare servers in Africa, so they don't have to suck all of this data down from Wisconsin. Let's take a look here. And you can adjust that, and you can write page rules, and you can change what gets cached, but the typical behavior, oh geez, I'm in this password crisis now. Oh, man. I have like 20 different Cloudflare accounts, and I don't know the passwords. None of which is made easier by the shift key not working. Oh, that's wrong, yeah. Okay, I was planning, if that question came up, to show you some statistics, but we run a couple sites that are very heavily trafficked, and it's a big win for that. One of our clients runs a site that's news about national parks, and it's very, very full of assets and pictures and MP3s and stuff like that, and caching that out at the edge of the cloud and around the country is a really big win. It lowers, it takes about 70% of the traffic off of our servers. We also host some state agencies. I guess I can talk about this. One of them is what used to be the Government Accountability Board. And we had a really interesting experience during the last election where bringit.wi.gov, the state site that tells you how to get voter ID, suddenly was hit by so much traffic it tanked our internet link into our rack. They were calling up and saying, gee, it's gotten really, really slow. And I went and looked at the stats, and well, sure enough, we were running about 6 times as much bandwidth as we normally do. So we had to, like in an emergency, increase our bandwidth. I just put that site behind Cloudflare the other day and put it in a new hosting environment. And about 60% of that traffic never hits our servers now, so it's a big win there. So it also gives you some security advantages, particularly if you get one of the paid plans. There's a free plan that gives you a little bit of protection, but if you get one of the $20 a month or up plans, you actually get a tunable web application firewall out there, and you find out all kinds of interesting things about people trying to hack your site. And you can get a lot of that junk hidden and block people who are trying to come in. So it's security, it's performance, it's keeping data off of your web server. These are the advantages. If you come over to our website, there's some Cloudflare videos and stuff like that. Anybody else? Okay, well, if you have any ideas or things you might be interested in using this for, or whatever, I have a bunch of cards up here for both of the hats I wear for the development site and for the hosting company. Please, if you're interested in getting some hosting that's based in Wisconsin and is really well connected around the state, talk to me. It happens that is one of the things we do really well. And thank you all for coming.